The weight of Barbara's accusations still clung to me as I sat in the darkness of my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my breath uneven. The humiliation of that moment, the whispers, the pointed stares, the way Barbara's venomous words had turned an entire room against me, burned like acid in my veins. But through the anger, through the pain, one thought rose above all others: this wasn't over. For years I had traveled the world as a pianist, believing my role in the family was distant, artistic, separate from the empire my father had built. But when he was diagnosed with cancer, everything shifted. I had spent those last months by his side, watching as the man who had once been a titan in the business world grew frail, clinging to the legacy he refused to see fall into the wrong hands. "You have a mind for business that Amber doesn't," he had told me. "She's smart, but she doesn't care about Carter Manufacturing. You do." And he had made sure, in his final act, that the company would be mine. Barbara's outrage wasn't about fairness. It was about control. She and Amber had assumed that Carter Manufacturing would fall neatly into their hands the moment my father passed, that I would be too distracted by grief, too weak to challenge them. But when the will was read and the business was left to me, his real daughter, their carefully constructed world had crumbled. And tonight, in front of Houston's most powerful business leaders, they had tried to rewrite history. I wasn't about to let them. I wiped my tears away and reached for my phone, dialing the only person who could turn this disaster into an opportunity. "Lily?" Henry Langston, my father's longtime lawyer and family friend, answered groggily. It was nearly midnight, but there was no time to wait. "I need you to draft a press release," I said, my voice steady now, my purpose clear. "First thing in the morning, I want every major business outlet in Houston to receive an official statement from Carter Manufacturing." Henry sighed. "I take it tonight didn't go well?" "Barbara ambushed me. She told a roomful of investors that I manipulated my father into leaving me the company, that I stole Amber's birthright." There was silence on the line, then a quiet chuckle. "Well, that was a mistake on her part," Henry said. "I know," I replied, "and I'm about to make sure she regrets it." By sunrise, my statement was everywhere. Carter Manufacturing CEO addresses false claims. The article laid it all out: my father's official will, his reasoning behind the decision, his handwritten letters detailing why Amber was unfit to run the company. It exposed Barbara and Amber's complete absence from the business, their years of treating Carter Manufacturing as a future cash cow rather than a responsibility. The final blow? A video clip attached at the bottom of the article. A recording from my father's hospital room. In it, he looked tired, weak, but his voice was strong as he spoke into the camera. "Lily is the only one I trust to carry on my work. Amber never wanted this company, but I know my daughter. She has my instincts, my drive, and she will protect this business." The backlash was immediate. Within hours, the same Houston elite who had whispered against me at Barbara's gala were calling to apologize. Clients who had hesitated in their contracts reaffirmed their partnerships. Investors expressed their support. The damage Barbara had tried to inflict on my reputation had backfired spectacularly. And then came the real reckoning. Amber called first, her voice laced with panic. "Lily, you have to take it down. Mom is losing it. She's talking about legal action." I almost laughed. "Legal action? Against the truth? You wanted the public to judge me," I told her. "Looks like they did." Barbara wasn't far behind. She stormed into my office later that afternoon, rage burning in her eyes. "You humiliated me," she hissed. "No, Barbara," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "You humiliated yourself." Her hands trembled, but she wasn't done. "This isn't over. You think this company will survive without us? You think the board will keep supporting you?" I smirked. "Actually, I just got off a call with them. They're quite pleased with how I handled this little PR mess. Seems they value a leader who doesn't crumble under pressure." Barbara's mask cracked then. For the first time, she looked truly defeated. I stood, stepping around my desk until we were face to face. "You and Amber thought I was weak. You thought you could tear me down with lies and turn my father's legacy into your personal piggy bank. But you underestimated me." I picked up the framed photo on my desk, the one of my father and me at my first recital, his arm wrapped around me, pride shining in his eyes. I held it up between us. "He believed in me," I said, "and you'll never take that away." Barbara left without another word. Carter Manufacturing thrived under my leadership. Investors poured in. My reputation, once tarnished by their accusations, was now stronger than ever. And Barbara? She faded into obscurity, her influence shattered. As for Amber, she disappeared from the business world entirely. No company wanted someone known for entitlement rather than work ethic. I had walked into that gala expecting peace. I left it with war. And I won. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the USB drive, as Marcus continued laying out the evidence my father had so carefully prepared. Every document, every recording, every financial report was a testament to the truth, that I was never some manipulative outsider who swooped in to steal Carter Manufacturing. I was the daughter my father trusted, the one who had honored his legacy, while Barbara and Amber saw it as nothing more than a golden prize to claim. She wanted a war, I said, my voice steadier now. Let's give her one. Marcus's lips curled into a satisfied smirk as he slid a thick folder across the desk. I was hoping you'd say that. We worked through the night, assembling a press statement, compiling financial records, and preparing an airtight response that would dismantle every lie Barbara had spread. I didn't just want to clear my name, I wanted to make sure she never had the chance to pull something like this again. By dawn, the plan was in motion. The first strike landed that morning when Houston's top business journal published an exclusive report titled "The Truth Behind Carter Manufacturing: A Daughter's Promise, a Family's Betrayal." It laid out the facts, how my father had personally mentored me in business, how Amber had rejected every offer to be involved in the company while he was alive, how Barbara had contested the will 3 times and lost. And then came the final blow, the video. A 3-minute clip of my father, recorded months before his passing, his voice firm despite the illness that had ravaged his body. My decision is final. I trust Lily with this company. She has earned it. Amber has made it clear she does not want this responsibility. This is not favoritism. This is about what's best for the future of Carter Manufacturing. The reaction was immediate. Board members who had hesitated the night before suddenly flooded my inbox with messages of support. Investors who had been wary of Barbara's claims distanced themselves from her entirely. Employees who had remained neutral rallied behind me, posting their own testimonials about the changes I had made to protect the company's workforce. And Barbara? She was silent. For the first time, the woman who had humiliated me in front of Houston's elite had nothing to say. Amber, on the other hand, couldn't resist the urge to lash out. Her furious post on social media, "Money doesn't replace family. Lily destroyed ours," was met with overwhelming backlash. The comments were brutal. "Didn't you refuse to work at the company? Your mom tried to steal from your own father's will, so you only wanted the business. After it was worth millions?" I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The final confrontation came a week later when Barbara stormed into my office unannounced. Her carefully curated elegance was gone. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her expression frantic. "You destroyed us," she hissed, slamming her hands onto my desk. "Do you know how many doors have shut on me since your little stunt?" I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in my lap. "You destroyed yourself, Barbara. You tried to turn my father's company into your personal inheritance. You lied to an entire room of people to humiliate me. And when that failed, you thought you could manipulate public perception." I tilted my head. "Remind me, how did that work out for you?" Her face twisted in fury. "You don't deserve any of this." I stood, my gaze never wavering. "Neither did you." She opened her mouth to say something else but stopped. She saw it then, what my father had seen all along. That I wasn't weak. That I wasn't some naive girl who could be bullied into submission. I had faced her worst and walked away stronger. With nothing left to say, Barbara turned and walked out of my office, out of my life. Amber faded into obscurity, her credibility in business ruined. Barbara's social standing, the thing she had fought so hard to protect, crumbled. And me? I continued building the company my father had entrusted to me, proving every day why he had made the right choice. Some battles are won in boardrooms, others are won in headlines. But the most satisfying victories? The ones where your enemies are forced to watch you thrive. I paused, scanning the room, meeting the eyes of every guest who had whispered behind my back, who had believed Barbara's lies without question. The weight of their judgment still hung in the air, but now, I was ready to crush it beneath the truth. "My father, Thomas Carter, built Carter Manufacturing from the ground up," I continued. "Before his passing, he made his wishes explicitly clear both in his legally binding will and in documented conversations that I was the one he trusted to lead this company. Not because of favoritism, not because of manipulation, but because I was the only one prepared and willing to do the work. A murmur rippled through the room as some guests hesitantly flipped open the binders, skimming the contents. Barbara's face had gone ghostly pale, and beside her, Amber clutched her champagne glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. As you'll see in the binders provided, Marcus took over smoothly, his voice commanding. This decision was not made lightly. The court has already ruled against multiple challenges to the will. Amber Carter, despite her claims tonight, formally declined a directorial role, stating, and I quote, "I have no interest in drowning in corporate paperwork." Someone near the front chuckled at that. Amber visibly flinched. "These are not opinions," I continued, my confidence solidifying with every word. "These are facts. Financial records, court transcripts, and my father's own recorded statements, which you will find in the documents before you." I took a step forward, my grip tightening around the microphone. Barbara wanted to humiliate me tonight. She wanted to rewrite history with deception, hoping that if she was loud enough, you would believe her. I let that sink in before delivering the final blow. But the truth doesn't need to be loud to be heard. The room was deathly silent. The weight of the evidence, of the undeniable, irrefutable truth, settled over the crowd like a suffocating fog. People who had whispered against me were now flipping through pages with furrowed brows, realizing they had backed the wrong horse. Barbara's composure cracked first. This is manipulation," she shrieked, voice wobbling. "Thomas was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. This is all forged." Marcus didn't even flinch. "Are you suggesting that 3 separate courts, multiple financial experts, and your late husband himself on video were all conspiring against you?" A low, unimpressed murmur spread through the crowd. Someone in the back scoffed. Amber, seeing her mother unravel, tried to salvage the situation. "Even if Dad left the company to Lily," she said, voice laced with desperation, "that doesn't mean she deserves it. She was gone for years. I was here." "Here?" I repeated, turning to her. "You mean spending money from a company you never worked a single day in? Traveling on business funds for a position you never held?" I gestured to the binders. "Pages 38 and 42 outline every unauthorized expense you charged to the company before my father's passing, including, if I'm not mistaken, a 2-week spa retreat labeled as executive development." Amber's mouth snapped shut. Marcus delivered the final nail in the coffin. "Ladies and gentlemen, you now have the full picture. You may make of it what you will, but I suggest you ask yourselves, who here is truly trying to deceive you?" Silence. Barbara and Amber stood frozen, caught in the snare of their own arrogance. The carefully curated social empire they had built, one based on manipulation, entitlement, and deceit, was crumbling before their eyes. And then, as if the final verdict had been reached, a slow, deliberate round of applause began from the far side of the room. One person clapping, then another, and another, until the entire ballroom was filled with the sound of hands meeting in approval. I exhaled, the tightness in my chest finally releasing. Barbara's hands trembled at her sides. She opened her mouth, closed it, then spun on her heel and stormed out, Amber scrambling after her. No one stopped them. I let the microphone fall to my side, my heart hammering as I met Marcus's gaze. He nodded, the faintest ghost of a smile on his lips. The battle was over, and I had won. That night, I didn't just defend my father's legacy, I secured my own. The silence that followed was deafening. The weight of my father's words, spoken from beyond the grave, settled over the room like a heavy curtain, suffocating the whispers that had once condemned me. I let the moment stretch, scanning the faces of Houston's business elite, many of whom had joined in my humiliation earlier that night, now avoiding my gaze, shifting uncomfortably as the truth unraveled before them. Some clutched the binders, flipping through the pages, seeing the court records, the financial documents, the undeniable proof of my legitimacy. Others looked toward Barbara, their expressions shifting from sympathy to skepticism. Barbara, however, stood frozen, her face pale, her lips pressed into a tight, furious line. She had orchestrated this spectacle to destroy me, to strip me of my credibility in front of the very people whose respect I had fought tirelessly to earn. But she hadn't anticipated this. She hadn't prepared for my father to speak louder in death than she ever could in life. I turned back to the crowd, my voice steady, stronger than before. "I was called a thief tonight," I said, my words slicing through the heavy silence. a manipulator, an opportunist. I was humiliated in front of all of you because of lies, and I let it happen because I believed, just for a moment, that maybe I owed my stepmother and stepsister more than I already gave. But now you've heard the truth, not from me, but from my father himself. You've seen the court records. You've seen the financial proof. I glanced toward the binders, where copies of company growth reports and board meeting minutes detailed my leadership over the past year. And now you have a choice. You can believe the lies of a woman who has spent the past year trying to rewrite history, or you can accept the reality that I am exactly where my father wanted me to be. Barbara let out a sharp, brittle laugh, but it lacked the confidence she had wielded earlier. This doesn't change anything, she snapped. Everyone here knows you were never part of this business until Thomas got sick. You waltzed in at the last minute and played the grieving daughter to steal what was never yours. I raised a brow, my lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. If that's the case, Barbara, why did my father document every meeting, every business strategy session, and every financial decision I made under his guidance? I gestured to the screen. Why did he personally ensure his lawyer and physician certified his decisions? Why did 3 separate courts rule against your claims? I let my gaze drift to Amber, whose face had turned a deep shade of red. Why did Amber decline every opportunity to be involved in Carter manufacturing, only to demand ownership when it suited her? Amber's mouth opened, then closed. She had no defense, not anymore. Barbara, however, still clung to her delusions of control. These people, she gestured wildly toward the crowd, desperation seeping into her voice, they know the truth. They know this business was meant to stay in the family. I tilted my head, feigning curiosity. And what do you think I am? For the first time all night, Barbara faltered. She had built her entire argument around the idea that I was an outsider, that I didn't belong, that I had taken something that wasn't mine. But now, surrounded by proof, she had nothing left to stand on. The silence stretched. Then, from the back of the room, someone clapped. I turned, watching as an older man, one of my father's longest business associates, rose from his seat and continued his slow, deliberate applause. A moment later, another joined in, then another. The sound built, growing, spreading across the room until it became an undeniable wave of support. Barbara's face twisted in fury. Amber looked like she wanted to disappear. I exhaled, the weight of the past hour lifting from my chest. Marcus stepped forward, clearing his throat. I believe that settles any remaining questions. He glanced toward Barbara and Amber, legally, financially, and publicly. Barbara let out a shuddering breath, her shoulders rigid. Come on, Amber, she spat, spinning on her heel. We're leaving. Amber hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the retreating form of her mother. Then, without a word, she followed. I watched them go, their presence in the room replaced by something far more valuable, respect. Turning back to the crowd, I met their gazes head-on. Now, if you'll excuse me, I said, setting the microphone down. I have a company to run, and with that, I walked out, victorious. Barbara's face twisted with frustration, her composure slipping. Generously? She spat, her voice laced with bitterness. Do you think a payout is the same as control? Thomas promised me security. I met her gaze, unflinching. And he gave it to you, I said evenly. The estate settlement ensures you'll never have to worry about money. But what you wanted wasn't security, it was power. And that was never yours to take. Amber shifted beside her mother, arms crossed tightly, her face red with humiliation as the whispers in the ballroom continued. She had spent years acting disinterested in the company, looking down on it, dismissing it as beneath her, until she realized its power was slipping out of her grasp. Now, standing under the weight of the truth, she had nothing left but her anger. Barbara took a deep breath, visibly grasping for a final move. You've humiliated us tonight, Lily, she said, her voice quieter but no less sharp. You think this is a victory, standing here with your lawyers and your spreadsheets, proving you were the better daughter? That you deserve this more than us? I let the words hang in the air before responding, keeping my voice steady. I didn't do this to prove anything, Barbara. I did it to stop the lies. To stop you from tarnishing my father's legacy because you didn't like his choices. If you wanted to challenge me in private, we could have had that conversation. But you did this. You chose to make it public. You chose to turn my father's company into a spectacle. I just made sure the truth had its moment too. Her eyes burned with fury, but she had nothing left to say. She had played her final card, and it had crumbled in her hands. Daniel Thompson cleared his throat, stepping forward once more. "Lily," he said, "if there was ever any doubt before, there isn't now. Carter Manufacturing is in the right hands." He turned to the room. "And I think we owe her the respect she deserves." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, followed by another ripple of applause, this time stronger, more decisive. The tides had shifted completely. Barbara's hands clenched at her sides. Amber whispered something to her, but whatever it wasn't enough to keep her standing there any longer. With a last withering glare in my direction, she turned on her heel and stormed toward the exit, Amber trailing behind her. I watched them go, feeling nothing but relief. As the applause continued, Marcus leaned toward me. "I believe that concludes this ambush," he said, his voice tinged with amusement. I exhaled slowly, then turned back to the room. "Now, if you'll excuse me," I said, lifting my champagne glass, "I'd like to finish my drink and enjoy the rest of this evening. Anyone else?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the last of the tension. The string quartet resumed playing, and as I took a sip of my champagne, I knew one thing for certain: Carter Manufacturing was exactly where it belonged. Barbara's departure was as dramatic as her attempted coup. She left Houston with barely a word, retreating to Phoenix in search of another wealthy benefactor to latch onto. The business community quickly distanced itself from her, the whispers of her public humiliation ensuring she was no longer a respected figure among the elite. Carter Manufacturing, however, continued to thrive. The backlash against Barbara's lies solidified my reputation, and in the months that followed, I secured partnerships that once seemed out of reach. Daniel Thompson's company not only doubled their orders, but also referred new clients, leading to a surge in production that required the opening of a second facility in Austin. The company was no longer just surviving under my leadership, it was expanding, proving that my father's faith in me had been well placed. Amber surprisingly remained at the company, though her transition was anything but smooth. At first she was guarded, reluctant to accept even the smallest assignments, but as weeks passed, something shifted. Perhaps it was the realization that she had no other viable options, or maybe she finally understood that success wasn't something that could be handed to her, it had to be earned. She threw herself into the work, showing a sharp instinct for branding and marketing. While we would never be the close sisters my father had once hoped for, a mutual respect began to form. She kept her head down, avoided office gossip, and to my astonishment, even defended me when old business acquaintances tried to bring up the scandal of Barbara's gala. As for me, I stepped fully into my role as CEO, no longer burdened by the shadow of doubt that had once followed me. The lessons I had learned from my father and from the chaos Barbara created became the foundation of my leadership. I understood now that success wasn't just about making the right business decisions, it was about standing firm when challenged, about proving your worth through actions, not just words. One afternoon, 6 months after that infamous gala, I found myself in my father's old office, now mine, flipping through a worn leather notebook he had left behind. Inside were pages of notes in his careful handwriting, strategies, ideas, reminders to himself about employees' birthdays and their children's names. In the margins, he had written a single sentence that stood out among the rest. A leader is not given respect, a leader earns it every day. I smiled, closing the book. I understood now, more than ever, what he had meant. I had earned it. And I wasn't done yet. Our paths have not crossed since, and I doubt they ever will. In the aftermath of Barbara's collapse and my rise, my life has transformed in ways I never expected. For years, music was my sanctuary, the one constant through childhood grief, the forced blending of families, and the relentless demands of conservatory training. I once believed my identity was tied to the piano, that stepping away from performance was only temporary. But leading Carter Manufacturing awakened something deeper in me, a satisfaction that went beyond applause, a purpose that extended beyond the stage. The challenge of running a company, the responsibility of creating jobs, and the thrill of solving complex problems, all of it has reshaped me into something more than just my father's daughter. Music is still a part of me, but now it's for myself, not for audiences. Late at night, after long board meetings and strategy sessions, I play just for the joy of it, with no expectation beyond the pure connection to sound and memory. Last month, I honored my father's legacy in a way he would have cherished. I launched the Thomas Carter Foundation, dedicated to funding music education for underprivileged schools across Texas and offering mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs. It was the perfect fusion of the two worlds that had shaped me: the artistry he nurtured in me as a child, and the business acumen he trusted me with as an adult. At the foundation's opening event, held inside Carter Manufacturing's main factory, I performed publicly for the first time since his passing. A grand piano had been brought into the vast industrial space, surrounded by the hum of machines my father built, the people whose futures I now protected. I played his favorite Chopin nocturne, and for the first time in a long time I felt him beside me, not just in memory, but in everything I had built, in everything I continued to fight for. Carter Manufacturing has become more than just a successful company. It has become a symbol of ethical leadership and resilience. The same business community that once doubted me now recognizes our innovation, our growth, and the integrity of my leadership. Even Amber, once content to drift in our parents' shadows, has found her footing, proving herself in ways I never imagined. And me? I've discovered that inheritance isn't just about assets or ownership. It's about carrying forward the best parts of those who came before us while forging a path of our own. My father was right all along. Some legacies aren't stolen, they're earned.